Welcome to Vulnerability Stadium. I'm Brian Chess, chairman of Iron Chef BlackHat. Today, together with my co-host Jacob West, we will bring you the first Iron Chef BlackHat. If you're unclear on what that means, here's a start. We love Iron Chef. We love the idea, just the absolute ridiculous idea that you can have two chefs compete and that you can give them just a ridiculously small amount of time to whip up something absolutely amazing. So, that's what we're going to do, but we can't cook. So, instead, we're going to do this. We're going to compare vulnerability analysis tools in a head-to-head bake-off. Here are the rules. Each of the chefs get 45 minutes to find vulnerabilities in the same piece of code. They haven't seen the code before. They can only use tools that they have written in order to analyze the code. The secret ingredient, just as with Iron Chef, is the code. When they're done, when their 45 minutes is up, they will present their results to a panel of celebrity judges who will select the winner. We'll ask the judges to look not only at the quality of the findings, but also the originality and the presentation that they get when they receive the findings. So the first half of the majority of the presentation will be the bug hunting portion. Then the first chef presents, and then the second chef presents. Our first chef today, Fay Kureha. Specialty. His specialty is runtime analysis. He is a lead engineer at Fortify Software, and he will be assisted by Eddie Lee. Toshi is no stranger to risk. This is him practicing BMX tricks on his tricycle. Our second chef today is Sean Fay. Sean's specialty is source code analysis. He is a lead engineer at Fortify Software, and he will be assisted by Jeff Morrison. This is a picture of Sean and his extended family. This is Sean. This is Sean's younger sister, Kathleen. Sean's no stranger to black hat techniques, but he's matured, we think. He now tries to avoid being caught on film. All right, so we've got two guys from Fortify up here on stage. Maybe that might seem a little funny to you one way or another. So let me say this. If you'd like to get another tools vendor to come up on stage with you, there are two possible things that might happen. First of all, that vendor may believe that they are inferior to you, in which case they're going to be afraid to get on stage with you for fear that you'll make them look silly. The other possibility is that that vendor may know that they are superior to you, in which case they won't get on stage with you for fear that you'll make them look silly. So, what we're going to do today is ask you to join us in looking at this code. After we get through with the 2 rounds of judging, we'll ask you to point out the bugs that these guys missed. The best bug that both of them missed gets dinner with us tonight at Bouchon. Jacob, why are we going to Bouchon?
Thomas Keller's restaurant.
Thomas Keller, the guy who did French Laundry up in Napa. All right, our celebrity judges are John Viega, VP and Chief Security Architect at McAfee. Jeremiah Grossman, Founder, CTO, White Hat Security. And Bogdan, President of Hakistan. And now it is time for us to unveil the secret ingredient. It is JSP Wiki. version 2.579. The language it's written in Java and with some JSP, of course. It's approximately 124 kloc, so that's a little bit more than you might like to read if you just had to sit down and only had 45 minutes. Home is jspwiki.org, and they describe themselves as a feature-rich and extensible wiki engine built around standard J2EE components. Here's your code. Anyone else who'd like to join us looking at the code? USB sticks are up here.
Here you go.
Please recycle. We didn't bring enough for everybody. Gentlemen, you may begin. The clock is ticking. Which button do we push, Jacob?
Your screen, right?
Sure. Jeff brought a timer. What a courteous guy. The code is unpacking on that side. What are these guys doing? Oh, they're going for the GUI unpacker.
This is like watching the beginning of the episode.
So Jacob, you want to do a few?
Yeah.
You want to introduce it?
So while we're doing exciting things like watch the zip file unpack, although maybe he's finished now, we asked the chef some questions before today, a little background, various things, and Brian and I are going to go through the questions and then take turns sharing the different chefs' responses to the questions. Brian, you want to take the first one?
The first question we asked was, how many lines of source code are in your tools, and what programming languages are they written in? Sean says, the static source code analysis tool is about 1 million lines of a combination of Java, C, and C++.
Toshi is actually going to be using two tools today. His fuzzing tool is about 20,000 lines of C#, and his bytecode monitoring tool is about 50,000 lines of Java.
Lean and mean, these guys.
Okay, next question. Do you use any open source components? If so, which ones? How about closed source components? Toshi responds, on the Java side, Tomcat, Struts, AspectJ, Hibernate, HSQL. He likes open source a little bit. On the .NET side, it's built on top of Visual Studio Test Edition, and he uses the .NET framework, not quite open source.
Wait, did you see what was happening over here? He started a static analysis tool and he got a bunch of errors right off the bat, and it seems to have flipped him back over to Windows mode.
This is what happens when you do live demos.
All right, so let's see. For the static analysis side, on the open source components, sure there are open source components like bcell, which is used for Java bytecode parsing, and also some closed source stuff like the C and C++ front end from the Edison Design Group. Back over, they're off and running again. Jacob, what's going on over on the runtime side?
I'm trying to tell. Oh, it looks like they got the application up and running, so that's a good sign since they're going to try to test it at runtime.
You know, I should let you run this. Do you want to go on to runtime analysis, or should we do another question or two now?
We could do one more question. So the last one we'll do now is, how long have your tools been around? Toshi's tools are pretty green, so both of them have been around for less than a year.
Sean's a little ahead on this front. I guess that shows because he's got more code. His tools have been around for about 3 years.
So anything exciting on this screen left? Okay, so what we're going to do while Sean gets a scan kicked off on his side and the runtime guys keep doing a little, looks like manual fuzzing over here, is tell you a little bit about Toshi's approach to testing today. And then after that, later on, Brian will do the same thing for the static analysis tools. Unfortunately, we couldn't get 16 screens in the room at once, so we're going to have to do a little switching back and forth. Okay, so Toshi's approach, I mentioned before, he's coming at it with two different tools. So he's got one tool that's a traditional black box pen testing tool, and one that's more of a white box analysis tool. On the black box side, this is a similar approach to tools you've heard of from Sensic, Spy Dynamics, Watchfire. Toshi's tool has a couple of unique factors. One is it's built on top of the Visual Studio Test platform. So he leverages some of their testing capabilities as well as giving people the ability to use existing test scripts to exercise an application. Unfortunately for him, we didn't give him any test scripts today, so he's starting from scratch. Now, everybody in the room, I'm sure, is an expert in black box testing. I'm going to give just a summary overview of what he's doing. So there's traversing the application and there's testing the application. Traversing usually comes in two forms, so you can manually go through. The disadvantages of this are that it can be pretty time-consuming to exercise the whole app. The advantage is you have a better chance to actually get everywhere. On the automated side, much easier to do. You just point it at a URL, it's going to crawl the application, potentially do a pretty good job of exercising it with very little human input. At the same time, it has a difficult time with complex interfaces. AJAX is a real problem here. And it can take a little while, too, because it's not very intelligent about the routes it's taking through the different pages. Now, on the testing side, we're going to talk about two techniques that Toshi's going to leverage today. One is signature-based analysis. So you provide some input, and based on the HTTP response you get back, you look for patterns, such as a SQL exception, maybe indicating that you've got a SQL injection vulnerability. Behavioral analysis is a little more complicated. So you're looking for potential changes in the way you can affect the application's behavior that are indicative of a vulnerability, even though there's no clear pattern that's coming back in the response. So an example is blind SQL injection. So you submit a normal request, and you see what kind of behavior you get back. Then you submit an injection attack that you think is going to change the query to be true all the time, and one that you think will be false all the time. You compare the behavior between these, and from that you can sometimes derive that there may be a vulnerability underneath, even if it's not evidenced as clearly as an exception or stack trace coming back to the screen. So advantages to black box scanning overall, and this is in contrast with static analysis, are if you've got an application running, you can test it. Point it at the URL and you can get started. You'll likely find some bugs. So I expect to see, we don't see what's on Sean's screen right now, these guys get started a little more quickly. Of course, they do have to get it up and running, so there's a little overhead there. And second, once you do find a bug, and I think this will definitely play in today, it's much easier to verify that it's real, because you've already got a reproducible test case, you've got some input and output that evidences the problem. You've got a pretty easy case justifying that it's a real bug. Static analysis, and we'll see, these guys are going to have a little more trouble proving that it's a real problem. And we expect our judges to keep this in mind when they're scoring them. So, disadvantages, potentially, of black box testing. You can only test what you can exercise. So if you miss part of the application, you're not going to find any bugs in it. And also, there's the possibility that you don't have the right oracle to identify a vulnerability. So if the vulnerability is evidenced through the web interface, you've got a pretty good chance at identifying it. If, however, it results in a change on the file system or a command being executed on the server, and that isn't evidenced back through the web interface, you may have difficulty identifying that because the only point of input you have interaction is through the web. So Toshi combats that with a little bit of special sauce today. He's got a white box testing tool.
Jacob, let me interrupt for a second. Can I flip back over to Sean?
Absolutely.
Sean has finished analyzing the code and has just brought up his results in the Results Explorer. So he's starting to look at what might actually be in this code.
Who's ahead at this point? Have these guys found any bugs yet?
Not yet.
I see lots and lots of stuff going on the screen, but it's not so easy to tell what phase of the analysis they're at. It looks like Toshi is going through reams and reams of stack traces. That could be good, that could be bad.